Hello and welcome to the new year. You're listening to episode 178 on this Thursday, January 16, 2025. Oh my God, I'm just not used to whichever day of the week it is. No, it's not that I have been partying this much for New Year's Eve, but we are so happy to see you back. I took a bit of time off during that holiday season, and I am joined by Fabio Fernandez, co-host of this episode. Fabio, how is the new year going for you?
Hey, Bill. I'm always happy to be here with you. New Year is going great. I hope I can wish a Happy New Year to you and to all the listeners. I know that where you live, maybe you can't do that, but in Italy, until the 15th, and we're recording this one day before it goes live. So I think I can still, I don't know how it applies, but I think I can still wish a good year to everybody.
I saw the old Curb Your Enthusiasm video where he says there's a statute of limitations for wishing a Happy New Year until, January 3rd, but I think he's just hating too much. For us, it's January 6th, which is Three Kings Day. This is in Luxembourg, and that's also when you're supposed to remove the Christmas tree, and then the whole nightmare of getting rid of your Christmas tree, which is a whole process, and definitely one that some people are replanting theirs in the hopes that maybe it'll survive until the end of the year. But yeah, in any case, I think people had a lot of good time, and we had the classic. One day we need to do, usually we take the break, but one day we need to do the regulation surrounding fireworks topic, because that's one that comes up usually about 2 weeks before New Year's.
Yeah.
Rules never really get made. In some countries they do have rules, but they're never enforced. You see these cities that say no fireworks, but then end up having quite a bit of it. I spent New Year's Eve in Lisbon, and you can really see that the Lisbon municipality is running quite a deficit because the fireworks were not very long. I think Italy, right? Italy is very fireworks happy, so I'm pretty sure it must have been incredibly loud in Milan.
Yeah, so actually I was in Piedmont, and the neighbors were shooting fireworks everywhere. So it only lasted a few minutes, maybe 10 minutes. So I don't complain too much, and I like to watch it. So I'm one of those that personally I don't do it, but I like watching it.
It is definitely beautiful, and it kind of comes with it. It's the same way sparkling wine. I mean, some people don't drink sparkling wine all year, but it's just perfect for the new year.
Exactly.
Well, let's talk about something else that, in the minds of some at least, is perfect for the new year, because since the 1st of January, we have the beautiful European Union finally having finalized one charger to rule them all. So if you weren't aware, the USB-C charger that you probably already have on quite a few of your devices is now mandatory. And what that means in practice is that all new devices being sold now need to have a USB-C charging port. And the idea is to standardize the charging infrastructure for all consumers, that you are able to use the same cable no matter what electronic device you are using, in order to reduce e-waste and also make your life simpler. This has been going on since about 2009. I know that a former EU commissioner from Luxembourg, Viviane Reding, was already talking about this back in the day, on top of a lot of the other things that she was doing, including trying to get rid of roaming charges and also being justice commissioner. So she had her hands full on this. And it's now finally, after about 16 years, it is now law. With multiple changes, including which charger should be used in the first place. So Fabio, I'm sure you must be delighted. One charger for all the devices. Sounds pretty cool, no?
I mean, as a consumer, I can see the benefits of it. Rome wasn't built in a day. So what's been happening is that for the past 2 years, all the major manufacturers, they have been changing their products somehow to accommodate that change and to implement the USB-C standard, which is now the de facto for data transfer and also charging for small devices. So those 2 years kind of gave us a little bit what companies are doing to adapt to this new legislation, especially Apple. Apple was the one that was really against. Some of the arguments align somehow with our arguments as well, because as you mentioned, this has been discussed in the past since 2009, only implemented 2 years ago and coming into force this year. So in 2009, for example, USB-C didn't exist. So creating a standard of cables that is going to be now the de facto one for everything. My stifle innovation, the EU Commission doesn't think so, but it is in fact something that is going to happen because companies usually come up with new technology, new cables, faster, better, and then the competition between them is what creates this new standard, gold standard. I would say that the best one wins. So when you lock that situation, that's what they're doing right now. You don't have competition anymore, and you need to update the regulation with the new standard in the future. So for the next couple of years, I see that USB-C is really good. Some experts disagree. One of the things that the experts say is that it's more fragile than the other cables, than the Lightning cable. Also, it's a little bit more fragile than the USB-A that we had before and B. So USB-C is really good in terms of data transfer. It's smaller, so it's good for small products, so smaller electronic devices. But it certainly has its downfalls, and we will have to see in the next couple of years how this is going to play out. Especially because for 2026, so next year, this is going to be also mandatory for laptops. So happy to see how this is going to play out in the laptop market. If you have, I know you have a MacBook, I also do have one. It's already the standard, and I'm really happy with it because now it's interchangeable with other devices. So as a consumer, I can say that I'm happy for the time being, but I want to see how innovation is going to play out on this new scenario.
Well, so on this last part, I was actually a bit disappointed when I changed from my older MacBook Air to this MacBook Pro, because I really, I'm a bit of a clumsy guy and I have a tendency of stumbling over my cables. And I have been incredibly close to ruining my laptop based on stumbling over my cable. On the old MacBook Air, there was this magnetic, I don't know what they called it.
Yeah,
but
the
there was this
MagSafe. That
exactly.
was amazing, yeah.
There was the original, I suppose the original MagSafe. It was really good. Like it just snapped off the moment you touched it, which sometimes could be annoying, but most of the time was actually incredibly helpful. It worked perfectly. It charged. And I thought that was a really cool thing. And there's just no way of doing that with USB-C. It's just not possible unless someone comes up with an accessory that would simulate this. I wouldn't even know how that would work.
Yeah.
So I think these kind of innovations are kind of cool when you have sort of the freedom to decide. I think we're only getting sort of to the beginning of the troubles of this charging infrastructure conversation, because when we inevitably get a better charger, because we always end up doing, the question is going to be like, who's going to decide? Because if Samsung lobbies for one and Apple lobbies for the other, and then there's another device that, the battery's too strong, so it won't work for both the laptops and the phones at the same time, or something like that. Who's going to make this ultimate decision? I just don't feel very confident that Berlaymont, the seat of the European Commission in Brussels, is really necessarily the best deciding factor here. One of the things, and maybe you can confirm that that's true, that I thought at least feels like a bad idea, is that I think the law comes with the requirement to have a charging port available in any case, which, when Apple got rid of the headphone jack and then said we're going to do only wireless headphones, people were skeptical it ended up working. I think it was a good idea, ultimately. It's like I think people kind of get used to sort of the wireless headphones. And those who want an alternative still have the adapter. But if it's required to have a USB-C port regardless, sort of then we're also going to be slower on moving to completely wireless charging, or to new types of wireless charging where maybe we just don't need the USB-C port whatsoever anymore, because all data transfer and all charging is going to be wireless. It just feels like a bad idea also to just like mandate that part.
Yeah, you're correct. I think they were trying to push, especially manufacturers, to go a more wireless charging situation. And they encountered a lot of difficulties into implementing that. There was overheating. There was pads that it needed to be exactly aligned for it to charge. So the technology is not quite there. But I agree with you. If we have a regulation that requires it, there is no push for us to develop something that it's better and solve the problems of wireless charging. Because you still need to have a plug, you still need to have that cable because of the legislation. So I agree completely with you. But something that I have been saying, so let me shift a little bit this conversation, because something that I've been saying now this year as well in the news cycle is how this new legislation is going to play out in the United States. And I want to hear your thoughts on that. Because I would say that most of the push from the left-wing media is also to have those kind of legislations implemented in the US. So make USB-C also the de facto charger for the United States. But the way I see it, I don't see it necessary, because what happened is when it was implemented in the EU, it kind of all the manufacturers switched to USB-C to be aligned with the legislation, and that impacted the whole globe because they sell the same product everywhere. They don't make like different products. So Apple didn't continue to sell their product with lightning cables in the US and USB-C in Europe, just for a reasonable way of implementing their products and cost and saving in the costs. They implemented the same product everywhere. So I don't see the necessity of implementing that same legislation in the US. So I want to hear also your thoughts on that, because I feel that this push is not productive at this point.
Well, it's performative, and if you think about the cost of just like the hours wasted in parliamentary committees and the bureaucrats working on all of these pieces of legislation is a complete waste of time. On top of which, it just it's performative action. It's just like we're trying to show you that we're doing something, and on top of that, you also have just the ignoring of the fact that wall plugs are also different in those different countries. So if you travel, you already need to use a bunch of adapters anyway. It's not an ease of consumers. And by the way, what if the US decided to actually make the lightning charger the mandatory one by saying, okay, well, that should be the one because Apple is employing considerably more people, and actually Apple is a US based company, while Samsung isn't. So why should we care about Samsung? Let's make the lightning charger the mandatory one, and then the headaches only start. And by the way, if the US implemented something similar, then there will be divergence at some point in the future on which cable to use. So those complications only start. But I mean, they have already started, right? I mean, iOS does not have all the same features in Europe that it has in the US now. With the DMA and DSA has already features that European consumers cannot access when it comes to text messages and all of those features. And by the way, and I think this, I'm not sure if you've had this experience also with all the compatibility questions about the hardware of cables. Not all cables are made equal. I mean, you have the USB-C, you have USB-C to USB-A, and then you have USB-C to USB-C. I have some devices that don't charge properly on a USB-C to USB-C. I don't have all devices charging properly through whether I'm using my MacBook to charge a device. For instance, I use an e-cigarette. It just doesn't want to charge properly on a USB-C to USB-C. So like, there's always ways to do it properly. I'm pretty sure Apple's cables already have a functionality that makes the phone charge faster to, just to say a bit of an FU to the regulators there. I feel like it's just like there is no end in sight, and with the technology only to come, it's only going to get more complicated. And I wish we would rather focus on sort of like developing cool tech in Europe as opposed to regulating the tech coming from abroad. It's very petty, and sort of the self-congratulating that happens online of like official EU accounts and like former commissioners and parliamentarians about this. Like, do you really have nothing better to do? I understand the convenience. I like the fact that, like I can use the same cable. I get it. I understand it, but I still need to bring a lightning cable because my headphones, my AirPods Max use the lightning cable. I still need I still need a micro USB because I have an old device that uses that. Yeah. And talk about e-waste. That's maybe the last point I wanted to bring up. Like, it's like, what about all the devices that haven't been sold yet? I'm pretty sure there's like in storage halls in Asia, there's like millions of devices that still use a lightning port or a micro USB port that could still be sold. They're perfectly good items. Consumers still have the cables to charge them. I'm not sure if the legislation allows for those devices still to be sold because they're still in stock and they haven't been newly produced yet. But I feel like given the leeway that they had, I'm pretty sure they're not legal to be sold now anymore.
Yeah, I don't
And
think
that
so.
is
I'll
also a
put
waste.
myself out there. Yeah, I think from this year they cannot sell those products anymore. I don't think they had a lot of inventory on that, just because for the past 2 years they have been making the switch. But yeah, I think you're correct. And if I had to complain something, is exactly what you were mentioning. So now we just need to get rid of all the USB-A ports that we have on cars, airports, hotels. I mean, it's going to be at least another 5 to 10 years just to switch all the other places that you need, for example, a USB-C to USB-C cable, because they are not implemented yet. So yeah, it's going to be fun, because they said that they're going to solve the problem. But when I travel, and I think you experience the same thing, you go to a hotel and they have like that old cable, and you're, oh, okay, like what should I do? Or you go to an airplane and then the cable doesn't fit because they don't have the USB to USB-C cable. Yeah, so all those things also, it's a hassle for consumers, I think, at this point.
Yeah, and I would also, by the way, recommend this on a completely different level. And I think the two of us have talked about this before. Just like, depending on where you travel in the world, don't plug in your phone to like to a USB-A or USB-C to charge it. I mean, if you do it in Germany or wherever, I think that's fine. But if you happen to do a visit to China and you're on the metro, don't plug in a data transfer cable into your phone. It takes about a couple seconds to download all the information from your phone. If there is that kind of spyware in a country that likes to spy on people, don't give them the opportunity. If you want to charge your phone, just use the regular wall plug. And if there's not one available, I would say rather invest into like a power bank that can charge your phone multiple times instead of using those. Again, if you do it in liberal democracies, I doubt there's a real problem with it. But in the same way that I don't feel comfortable using a Huawei phone, I also am not completely comfortable using those charging ports, except for things that don't transmit information, like charging a power bank or a vape or whatever, headphones that wouldn't have any confidential information. Like, treat your phone like the actual safe house of information that it is, with all your financial information on it. It's like, keep that safe. You put your wallet in the safe in the hotels. Well, be careful with your phone also. So the message out to the consumers there. Anything else on the common charger, Fabio, or should we move on?
No, I think that the other legislation that probably we're going to talk about a lot for the next couple of years is the mandatory user replaceable batteries that need to be implemented until 2027. So that's something else from the EU Commission that it's going to impact Apple, especially other countries, the United States. As we are saying, the same product is sold everywhere. So that's something that is also going to be, I think, on the pipeline here for us to discuss in the next couple of years.
And it's one of those things that I'm actually curious how Apple's going to brand it, because I'm pretty sure Apple's going to brand it as like an innovation, and maybe going to sell you also like a kit that has like a battery that charges while you're on your way, so you can take your battery in and out. I mean, sort of the old way it was. I used to have like 2 batteries for my Nokia 3310, so I could just like change it, even though the battery lasted for like 2 weeks.
Yeah,
you were using your phone intensely. But yeah, it's one of those things that it's going to be interesting to see like how everything needs to be revamped, and whether it will be revamped in the US also, because we still do set the trends in the EU, but only really because we're a very big consumer market. And as capital goes down of consumers being able to always afford the newest phones, curious if those companies are still going to cater as much to the European market, or sometimes say, okay, well, then we make a different device that is not as good for the European market and give the US or like the North American consumers the best one. Yeah, I think is probably the more likely scenario in the future, as Europeans definitely don't upgrade their phones as often as Americans will. But let's move on to a completely different topic. Well, I mean, we're still staying in tech, but a very different type of tech, and that's social media. For those of you who still remember, there is this social media platform called Facebook. A lot of people haven't used it in a while, but of course, Facebook, or the actual company Meta, has of course done much better on other platforms that it has acquired, such as WhatsApp, the messaging service, and also Instagram, which has sort of, at least for me, replaced the use of Facebook there. I check my Instagram first before I check really any other social media, I have to say, these days. But in any case, Meta has changed moderation policies, and this is something that's been quite controversial over the past few years. especially during the time of the pandemic, when a lot of social media platforms were heavily engaged in providing context for the information being put out there, or scanning specifically the captions and the things said on videos, whether you were posting a video on YouTube or Instagram, posting on Facebook, or back then when it was Twitter, there were these little information boxes provided, sometimes complicated, contradicting information, sometimes no information, sometimes posts were being taken down. Now, Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg made a statement online saying that this is all about to change. So I'll just play a little clip here. So yeah, you can hear that Mark Zuckerberg says that ultimately that it was a bad idea to sort of go heavy on the what he actually calls censorship in the video. Also, I find that interesting that he calls it censorship. That they might have been using too much of a heavy hand. They should go down the road of X, is what he says, and use community notes and have the sort of the users contribute to the information being out there. Quite a reversal, honestly. Like this video, initially I was like, well, could this be AI? Because I mean, Mark Zuckerberg does not sound like the way he used to, just years ago in those hearings when everything was sort of catered towards, trying to do as much as possible. And now he's like sort of the laid back, cool dude with the T-shirt. And we really see a shift in sort of the approach that some of these social media companies are taking there, Fabio. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so Meta is doing like a major overhaul of their policies in terms of the content that it's allowed in their products, such as WhatsApp, Instagram, Facebook, all those platforms. So what they are actually doing is removing some of the guardrails that they have implemented really since 2016. If you remember the Hunter Biden story that was blocked, and then there was a lot of pressure for political misinformation. Russia is trying to steal the American elections, and then they started implementing some of these guardrails to protect from misinformation. And then we had a huge boom during the pandemic where social media platforms really stepped in filtering all the information. You couldn't say anything about the pandemic. You couldn't mention any other alternative or anything that was going against the mainstream narrative, even if it was from credit hospitals, credit physicians. You couldn't say anything against it. And then really since 2020, so since the pandemic, things got even worse. And even became the whole model of fight against this oppression of free speech that is part of the Trump campaign, and then ultimately also swayed a lot of voters in his favor. So I think Mark Zuckerberg now is trying to be on the right side of history. He recently gave an interview to Joe Rogan where he talked about how Facebook actually colluded, and he said that openly, how Facebook colluded with the Biden administration to push a narrative during COVID, also during the election. So I think what Meta is doing now is taking the temperature of what is the cultural situation, especially in the US, and people are seeing that social media platforms played a huge role in drafting this narrative. It's also aligned with the mainstream media losing even more their credibility. So social media platforms want to be part of this new public square, and you've seen what happened with X when Elon Musk got X. He basically transformed the whole company. Fired, I think, 80% of the staff, made the company smaller, more nimble, and ultimately the company is now much better. And also, I think free speech is much better in terms of how information is shared on X. And part of it is because of community notes. So one thing for us to clarify is that Facebook is not completely getting rid of any guardrails. What they are doing is they are not using the third-party validation system that they had before, which was mostly left-wing people pushing their agenda, and they are moving towards a more community note system, which is what X and Elon Musk implemented on X on Twitter, which was Twitter before. So within this new system, the community is actually creating the notes, is verifying the information. You can have different opinions about something. The thing is voted on, and then when you have a prevalence of what the note should be about, then it is implemented and shown to other users. So I think this is a better system, is more democratic, and at the same time doesn't block other opinions or other views on subjects that are a little touchy from time to time. But there are also changes on their policies regarding how they're going to use AI to monitor content. They were using AI and algorithms a lot, and a lot of content was wrongly labeled as misinformation or wrongly labeled as political, and they were taken down or not pushed as they should by the algorithm. Organically. So what they're doing right now is that they are going to leave the community complain about something, or they're going to let the algorithm be more organic in terms of how the content is viewed and perceived by other people, instead of taking down something automatically without any complaints or any other thing like that. So I think this is good. This is a good way, but I think Facebook or Meta in general completely lost credibility, especially with Zuckerberg going on Joe Rogan and assuming that they did that openly. They colluded with a government to push a narrative for the past 5 to 6 years. So I think that's bad, but the way they're going right now, I think it's better for free speech, and I think it's better for everybody, because you can now share things more openly, and we do share and we do use social media for a wide range of things, not only for personal things, but also for political discussions, for advocacies, to participate in the democratic process.
Yeah, it feels a little bit strange to have that conversation in the way that we are currently having it, because it just feels like so off. Like I remember when it was like really like, okay, how can I post this without having a disclaimer put on it, even though it was sometimes just an opinion. So to really have the conversation in that way and have the CEO of Meta go on Joe Rogan and say these things quite clearly, it feels like a bit like so he found sort of the reason how the company was successful in the first place. So that community, and like, what does the community want? What do people get out of social media? Let's go back to sort of that, because that's what people use it. You know, people don't use social media in order to prescribe to sort of an editorial standard of how to use it. They're not trying to be journalists when they tweet. They're just trying to, express whatever they were thinking. And I remember the early days of Facebook where you could just write literally whatever you wanted, and people would sort of, battle it out in the comments. I do understand a need for, like the want for some level of content moderation. I mean, I see a lot of government propaganda. I mean, this is particularly true on X, where, every paid influencer under the sun working for the North Korean, I see like visit North Korea. Somebody sent this to me recently. It's like visit North Korea propaganda. It's like, oh, look, all the school supplies are provided by the government. It's, probably made in forced labor camps. So it's like, it's good to have something like community notes. I'm actually a contributor to community notes, and I like also how community notes actually rates your trustability based on how you voted and contributed in the past, and whether those community notes were rated like trustworthy or not. So whether that was good or not actually improves the ranking you have in terms of how valuable your community notes are. But I also do have to say, to sort of give some credit to old Facebook in that sense, and the decision to use independent fact checkers. Like, there are issues that are so complicated that you do, like, there is a benefit to relying on someone who's actually like does this professionally, right? I mean, the story of the lab leak theory with the pandemic was initially a conspiracy theory, and it took the work of the Wall Street Journal, the professional journalists, to look into it and give it credibility. Like, someone had to do the actual legwork outside of having an opinion and go there and look through documents and do what journalists are supposed to do, like, professionally. And so it's a fine line, right? I mean, community notes often use journalistic work to back up what they say. Is like you reference articles from news. You don't reference opinions. You still need someone, like you still need to rely on someone that has done the legwork here.
Yeah.
I think old Facebook was trying to cut straight to sort of the journalistic work, and in many cases that is useful to have that context. But I think in other cases, as sort of the network television and a lot of the big newspapers have become very editorialized, including in their reporting.
Yeah.
It creates a scenario in which, opinion becomes fact, also for some for a lot of people in the reporting sector, and that sort of creates the perception that there is just no, it leans left.
Yeah.
I wonder if
Well,
now we create the risk that they're going to lean right, though, the social media platforms, right? I mean, that's also
I would say, I think it's more centered now. I think one of the big benefits of the community notes, as you were saying, is that you can change the note over time. So if for example, the leak at the time was bonkers to think that it was leaked from a facility. That with the investigation, they find out that actually was leaked. So what you can do is, okay, so now people vote with the new information, they vote again on the same community note, and it changes the community note. Okay, so now this is verified. So once was just a theory, now it's verified. So that's something that wouldn't happen with the old system, because the old system was being pushed by the government. The government had the narrative. They were pushing whatever the narrative was. So you weren't allowed to change that, even if new facts came into place showing that was true. So that is exactly what happened with the Hunter Biden story. It was verified. The Hunter Biden story. The laptop was real. It was his laptop with all the information. And then you couldn't say that on social media without having that content taken down. In a community note system, the community note would be updated and saying, okay, so this was a theory before. Now it is confirmed. Here is the investigative work from this journalist or whatever. So I think this is the big difference with community notes. And I think this is the big win from this change from Facebook.
Yes, and I mean, it's good to see that there's movement in sort of what we at some point thought was sort of like a one side leaning tech space, and then Spotify said, okay, well, let's get Joe Rogan, no matter how controversial he is, and make him exclusive to Spotify, and we're not going to censor the content in podcasts, but sometimes we're going to have disclaimers on, but ultimately we're not going to remove podcast episodes. I just hope we're not going to counter steer and try and correct by being too one-sided now. Is it now? If I see Elon Musk, endorsing very far-right parties in Germany, I hope that my For You page does not, and I see tendencies on that on X, becomes eventually sort of like Elon enabling kind of content. And where sort of some content in one direction, more of a right-wing leaning direction, is sort of pushed to me, while I haven't particularly expressed those views actually. So I really hope that trying to please one administration or another is not going to lean social media companies to try and go the other way now, because that's sort of the trend. I think ultimately what people want is to be able to have that engagement with people from different viewpoints. That was what made social media exciting in the first place.
Yeah.
So if Mark Zuckerberg now says he's a libertarian, I hope he sticks with that and doesn't choose either side, because I kind of like this approach. I'm
one thing that they did to fix this problem, so the social media companies, they create the bubbles, right? So the algorithm shows content from your bubble. So if you're a right-wing people, you're just getting content on that side. If you're a left-wing person, you're getting content on that side. So it seems that the content or the platform is more left-wing or more right-wing just because the type of content you're receiving because of your algorithm. But it doesn't mean that you're having a fair discussion that we are supposed to have in a democracy or with freedom of speech. So I think that's also another problem from social media accounts and social media platforms, is that you're inserted into your own bubble and you don't see maybe different perspectives. So I think what Elon Musk sometimes do is trying to pick up that other narrative and put it into the spotlight. But some of the narratives that he's picking up, I agree with you that shouldn't be picked up because they are bad narratives. So they are not good. This is just because you have free speech and you can say whatever you want doesn't mean that what you're saying it's good and should be promoted. So I agree with you on that. Absolutely.
I think to some extent, one thing is the bubble, and the other thing is like getting engagement by getting a rise out of you. And sometimes I see content and it's like, there's no way the algorithm thinks that this is my viewpoint. It just tries to get me to react to this, and that's why it's showing me this, right? And it works, right? I mean, there's a psychological trend here, and I understand this, by the way, from the perspective of the company. It's like, of course, like you want to keep the customer on the platform as long as possible. That's like the whole point. In the same way, like, if I go into a clothing store, they try and keep me in there because the longer I'm in there, the more likely I am to buy something. It was like, I don't blame the companies for doing that. That completely makes sense to me. It's, but like, I hope that we sort of, fix the pendulum and sort of land somewhere where social media companies just feel like they don't have to cater to someone. And I know they need it. And I know now Meta is also saying, look, hey, we need some help here because Europe is trying to sort of overregulate us and put additional taxes on us, and it would be good for the administration to support it. I just hope that eventually we get to a point where governments meddle so little that the social media companies can just sort of like keep a steady head. Because I don't really want to have the CEOs of those major companies worry about who's in charge. It should be independent of that. They should just go about their business, make money, create good products. That's what I want them to do. I don't want them to have to like think about whether they need to sway this way or that way, or attend these dinner parties of whoever is president. That really shouldn't matter. We really need to like sort of decouple like the influence that politics wants to have on social media and that social media wants to have on politics from each other, and have people discuss as neutral platforms on these. That should be the goal.
Yep.
But I think, oh my God, we are already out of time here, 36 minutes and running. Fabio, let's keep it to that. And anything new that people should check out on social media with regards to consumer choice, and where are we actually? What's all the platforms we're on for the people who don't follow us everywhere yet?
Actually, we are in all social media platforms, but we are heavily investing now on Instagram and X. So if you want to follow our content there, that's where we publish most of the things, and you can be updated about the projects that we're working on. And at the end of last year, I released a new report with my colleague Emil Panzaro, and it's actually comparing the United States and Europe in terms of regulations and how those regulations or over-regulation is actually harming the European Union and places like the United States and other places around the globe where you have less legislation, less regulation, actually have more innovation. So Europe is going on the downfall in terms of innovation. It's creating regulation time and time again. We mentioned some of them today. So this is a nice report. If people want to check it out, you can see that on our website, consumerchoicecenter.org, or you can go to the social media platforms. We also publish the updates there.
Wonderful. Well, people can check that out by not just using an app, but also once in a while opening a browser and actually finding our website there and checking that out. Well, thank you so much, Fabio, for your time today. And we'll speak to you very soon. Thank you for the listeners also for tuning in, and we'll see you Thursday.